Now recording. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, day before Halloween of 2019. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of ITSE 2309 at Collin College in Frisco, Texas. And let's see, I have an icon bouncing, so I believe you guys can hear me. How many students do I have out there? Amanda, say something. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Very well. Let's see, calling your attention, it's time to get test 2 done. Now, typically, here's what I do. And I don't put this on my syllabus because I don't want a lot of people to know about it. But I will generally use the final as a makeup or as a, if you are happy with your grade, you do not have to take the final, okay? If you did not do well on test 1 or test 2, I hope you do better on test 2, then take the final, okay? Let's see, be careful about talking about that a whole lot. We're not supposed to do that, but I've been teaching too long to pay too much attention to deans and things like that. Let's see. Practice test. Pay attention to the practice test. The practice test is what's going to help you on the test. A lot of test 2 comes from test 1. Again, a lot of it's rehash, but a lot of it is new stuff. I intend to make that available. Let's see, when do I have it? I've got the practice test due Monday. I was going to turn on the solutions. I might turn them on a little earlier than Monday. I'll probably turn the solutions to the practice test on Friday. That means that you can see the solutions. They're my solutions. They're not necessarily. They're not even necessarily right, but they're ones that that's the ways I think you should go. Then I will probably have the test 2 become available Friday, over the weekend, and into next week by a couple of days. Now, I don't want this dragging on and on and on. Last time I had people who just didn't take the test and then want to take a makeup. Well, the makeup will be the final. Okay, so we have test 2 coming up. The practice test is available now, so you should be able to open that. And I'll test it in a minute and see. Somebody test it and let me know. If you can't get into practice test 2, let me know right away. Functions, chapter 9. Functions, chapter 9. Student resources, as usual. I think I have, there's this PowerPoints, which I don't use a whole lot. What else? This is what we're going to do. The reading assignment is page 262 to 283. There are other functions in the chapter, and I'm saying most of these are unique to SQL Server. I'll talk about them as optional material. I will not put them on the test. So we're going to cover page 262 in the text through 283. If it's not in there, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. There's a video. I usually try to give you somebody else's take on it besides mine. Okay, functions. What is a function? If we talk about a function, where is everybody for class today anyway? You're the only one here for class? Looks that way, doesn't it? Oh, I'll have a few. Well, I guess it's a crummy day and everybody's online, I guess. We're gonna, what is a function? Okay, a function is, we will have it something like, let me go to my notepad here. And so f of x, That's from our mathematics, of course. F of x equals what? 3x plus 7, something like that. And so what it does, it returns a number. This one's probably an integer valued function. And I say, okay, I want you please to evaluate for me f of 5. And so how do you evaluate f of 5 if f of x is 3 times x plus 7? Well, you calculate 3 times 5. So you replace that x with a 5, and you calculate 3 times 5 is 15 plus 7 is 22 if I'm having a good day. So I say f of 5 equals 22. And in this case, it really is equal. F of 5 is 22. So this is an integer. It really is. And I could develop a different function that says, oh, let's say g of x is how many digits are in x, in base 10. So how many digits? So if I want to do here g of 101, for example, how many digits are in 101? I count 3. 1, 2, 3. So the result of that would be g. Now notice that there are two different kinds of functions here. F of x, we have a function that gives us back a new number. It takes some input and it gives us back a different number, a new number. That's not x. So it changes. It doesn't change x, but it doesn't give us back x or anything about it. It multiplies it by 3 and adds 7. Okay, this one simply goes 1, 2, 3 and counts the digits. They are both functions because they both give me back something to do with that number. So for any input x, I get back a unique output y, and that's what gives me the idea of a function. Now notice that I have one function here, one kind of a function that gives me information about it. How many digits are in there? It could give me back true or false. Is it positive or negative? Is it even or odd? It could give me back information about it. And functions that give me back information about the argument, so 101 in this case is called the argument. X is an argument to the function. In computer science, we tend to sometimes call them parameters. A mathematician would have a little bit of argument with that, but an argument. It's called an argument in mathematics. And if it gives me back information about it, this kind of a function is called an observer. So a function that gives me back information about what's passed as an argument is an observer. Doesn't change anything, it just gives me back that. A function that gives me back a new value, in this case an integer, is called a constructor. You'll hear that one used elsewhere. So you have observer functions and you have constructor functions. So the first thing we're going to look at is functions that act on strings. And the first ones we're going to look at, we're going to do observer functions first. I don't know, just because the text does them first. It really doesn't matter. So these are the observer functions. And let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Observer functions, and the first one we have is the, well, len. Len of something returns an integer representing the number of characters in the string passed as the argument. In this case, I use arg. In SQL Server, it counts leading spaces as part of the string, but it does not count trailing spaces. Okay, so if you have spaces on both sides, it will count the spaces at the beginning, but it will not count them at the end. I'll show you an example of it. Suppose the string contained only spaces, it would say 0. Let's go look at it. I'm showing you something here. That we haven't seen before. Goodness gracious, a land of mercy. What am I doing? I am declaring a variable. Why, I didn't know we could declare variables in SQL. We can't declare variables in SQL. SQL doesn't have a variable. So I'm stepping out of the world of SQL now, and I'm stepping into the world of SQL Server programming. All SQL implementations have wrapped around them a language, a programming language. Inside of this programming language, I can declare variables, I can put values into these variables, and I can go back later and get that value out and use it and manipulate it in the program. I have if, then, else logic, as you're expecting. I have while loops, as you're expecting. And the usual, that's, if, then, else, and conditional and looping. Of course, I also have case logic and stuff like that, but basically all I need is an if, then, else and a loop. And the only bad part, the reason I don't use this a whole lot when I'm demonstrating is if I say go, that variable goes away. If the program ends, my variable called my string goes away. So if I were to execute this, I'm going to say execute him, execute, and he says 3, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 characters in that variable, foo, and that's right. But if I try just to execute him like this, what's going to happen? That variable, my string, will not be defined. So once I do that, I get an error message that says it's not defined. Why? Because it's defined up here, but I didn't execute that. So anytime your program terminates, all of your variables go away. If you say go, all of your variables go away. Therefore, I don't use it very much, but this is common. And if you want to take the advanced database programming, we start right off using variables, putting stuff in variables and stuff like that. So I just thought I'd mention that. It's something I can do. All variable names, by the way, start with this @ sign. I guess that's an @ sign. I don't know that it probably has a formal name. And they are set with the word set. You can also use select to set a variable. So I can say select my string gets foo. I always say gets when I'm making the assignment to differentiate between equals, make it be equal to, and assign it, make it have that value. Anyway, print just prints the value. To execute, it prints 3. I can also turn this stuff off, set no count on. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Set no count on. So if I set no count on, I suppress that stuff. No. Okay, I guess that wasn't it. I didn't really want to get into variables, but I can declare a variable just like I can in any other programming language. The thing of it is that the variable is not part of SQL. Therefore, it will tend to vary as you go across platforms. So if we were to step out of SQL Server and go to Oracle, it would look entirely different than that, although the SQL itself should be the same. Print is just, think of it like select. If I just want to see it, I could have said, look at the difference. print the length of 3 leading spaces, FEE. What do you expect that to print? And then I'm going to talk about other options than print. What do you expect to see it print? 6. It will print a 6 because it will count the leading spaces. Execute. It printed the 6. Now look at that 6 carefully. See how it's just 6. Okay, I'm going to change it just a little bit. And instead of print, I'm going to say select LEN fee. Now, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, but I want you to notice how this will change a little bit. Notice here I got a column. A select statement gives me back a table that has that value in it. So it gives me back a table with 1 column, 1 row, and that value 6 is the content of it. Whereas when I said print, I just got a 6, just a plain old 6, blap, put out there. Sometimes you like one, sometimes you like the other. When I'm in programming, I'm usually going to do select. But when I just want to see the answer, I like print a little bit better. Print is not supported in all platforms. So print is the language that goes with it in SQL is called transaction SQL, transaction SQL, or it's shortened to TSQL or T-SQL, whichever you, when you hear T-SQL, they're talking about this language that wraps around SQL. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to talk about that and do a couple of examples of it. I wouldn't put it on a test or anything because it is outside the scope of this class. So here I have 3 leading spaces, and you said I would get a 6, and I did. If I have 3 trailing spaces, execute that, I just get 3. It strips off the 3 trailing spaces and only counts 3. There is a way to make it count the trailing spaces. I'm not going to go into it because our textbook doesn't. Sometimes you will need the trailing spaces. I can think of some tasks where I need to know, did it end in spaces or not? But there is a way to get it to, but I'm going to leave that to you to Google. Well, what would happen if I just had 6 spaces or 16 spaces or whatever? What would I count? What do you think? Nothing. No, not nothing. 0. 0 is not nothing. Okay, important point there. 0 is a number with all the rights and privileges of any other number. When you say something is nothing, you're saying it's null. Okay, big difference there. Okay, so if I do this, I do select 0. Questions? Okay, and LEN, this one, when we're setting up our tables, we have to check that the last name is not null. There is another constraint that we use a lot in database. It's not enough for me just to say not null, because it's not null if it's all spaces. It's not null if it's quote, quote, right together, the string with no characters in it. That's not null. So think about, what does it mean to say, okay, you have to have a name to be in my database, but okay, I got a name, but my name doesn't have any characters in it. You know, that's kind of mind-boggling. Gee, that's not the same thing as not having a name, okay, to a database. And it's one of our problems. So this idea of a string that can be, so I write another constraint, a second constraint, and so I'm going to say you can't have your last name, you have to have a last name, and it has to have at least 1 printable character in it. So that would get it, if it were all spaces, that constraint would execute, and if you just didn't have any characters in there. If you go to Access, if you program in Access, and when you're setting up your tables, you typically use the graphical user interface in Access. Have you guys had a class in Access, 1309, ITSW 1309? Okay, yeah, whatever. Was it here? Yeah. Probably that one then. Remember, when you set up your tables and you're going through answering all these questions about the table, one of them was allow nulls, yes or no, and then the one that came right after that said allow zero length. And the problem with it was that allow nulls defaulted to no, allow zero length defaulted to yes in Access. I think they should both default to no. And if you want to allow zero length, then you may. But you have to go in and change that if you want to keep out zero length. In SQL Server, we would write this. Most of the time, I write both of these constraints. If I need to, they call me the constraint kid. When I'm writing a table, I constrain everything. I don't let anything be null, and I don't let anything have zero length in it. If later I decide, well, I want to allow it to be null or allow it to have zero length, it's easier to take a constraint off than it is to put one back on after the fact. Okay, char index. I don't think I might cover pattern index, we'll see. Returns an integer that represents the first occurrence of the find string, F, within the search string, S. So let me show you the example of it, I think is the best thing to do. Char index says find this, that's F, find this, find whatever, in, find this, in here. Find the first place it occurs. Now, the question that you always going to need to ask anytime you talk about what position something is in a string, where does it start counting? Okay. What is the index of this guy? What are my options? It could be 1 or it could be 0. And some people think, well, computer scientists start counting at 0. Have you ever heard that? No, computer scientists don't start counting at 0. If we were counting the cars in a train as they came by, we would count the beginning of the car, not the end of the car. How many beginnings did we see? Because remember that character is 8 bits. So as I'm counting the characters, do I count the first bit as the character, or do I count the last one? Do I count the leading edge of that character, or do I count the space between it and the next character? It makes a difference because how you view it, we don't start counting at 0. We're going to count the same number of characters in that string, but do we treat the first one as 0 or is the first one 1? Can you think of a language that starts at 0? What is it? Java. Java, slap it. Yep, Java. What else? C. Okay. Java and C tend to be very similar. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it does in SQL. The first one is 1. The first character, you start counting at 1 in SQL. SQL is a more archaic language. It goes back a long way. Back in those days, computer scientists didn't start starting at 0 until we got to C, which was sometime later. So this is older. We said this is 1 and then 2 and then 3. So where will we find this pattern beginning in this find string? We're going to find find the first occurrence of 00 in the string woohoo. Where will it be? At position, what? Position 2, I'm told. Online people, what do you think? You agree? I guess you do. And it is too. Optionally, I can begin searching at a given place. So I say find the string OO in this string woohoo, but I want you to start at position 3, so start here. Well, we're not going to find it there. I find the O, but I don't have an OO. So I'm not going to, it's not going to be 3, 4, 5, it's going to be at position 6 before I find it. So when that's at 6. Okay. If I just say print phi, I get phi with 3 leading spaces. If I say print L trim left trim phi, let's put these two guys together. Okay, there's phi untrimmed. Under it, phi is left trim. Trim off left spaces. Okay. L trim. I have stepped out of the observer functions, by the way. There's one more that I should mention. Pat index, pattern index, so this is character index. The first occurrence of the string of characters. Pattern index is just like char index. It works exactly the same way, except it allows you to put wildcard characters. Remember those from the like stuff? Asterisk means splat. Asterisk means any group of characters. Question mark means any single character. I don't use that one as much. I tend to want you to know about length and char index. Next one is, now we have stepped out of the observers into the constructor functions. These are going to give us a new string. So if I left trim this one, the result of it is a different string from this one. It's not the same string. It gives me back a different string. Okay, not information on it. If I decide to print phi and append to that string an asterisk, I do that so that I can see the trailing spaces. When I say print trailing spaces, it prints them. Someone just sent me a text. Need to check to make sure it isn't my wife. I'm supposed to. She doesn't call me, so I ignore the phone ringing, but if she sends a text, I look at it. Okay. I guess I was wrong. Nobody wants to talk to me. Anyway, I put this, lots of times I'll append an asterisk if I want to check to see, am I getting what I need to get there? And I'm seeing my 3 spaces. So, but if I say R trim phi and then append the asterisk, I'm going to chop off those trailing spaces. Here, the parentheses. Yeah, it needs the parentheses because rtrim is a function, and functions typically take their arguments in parentheses. We're going to see other things that are not functions. But when you say a function, like remember f of x equals 3x plus 7, well, the x is in parentheses in mathematics. And computer science has largely kept the mathematics notations for functions. So the way we design them. You can also write your own functions. If you want to define your own function, you can. That's programming. That's the next that's the next class. So we won't go there right now. Let's see. We have used some of these. The left returns a string containing the specified number of characters from either the right or the left of the string passed as S. A lot of you have already used this one. It was mentioned earlier. Substring, left and right. By the way, many platforms give you just a plain old trim. In other words, trim the spaces off of both sides. I don't really need that. I'm not sure whether SQL gives that to me or not. I can just say L trim, open parentheses, R trim, open parentheses, the string, close, close. And it will knock them off both sides. Doesn't matter which one you say first either. So the substring beginning at position T. So for example, length so I want the substring hello world. I want you to begin at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Begin at 7. How many do I want? How many characters do you think I want? I don't know. Let's take 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to see WORL. So I'm expecting to see WORL, what I'm expecting my output to be. So let's print it. And there it is. Okay. Replace. Concat is one that lets you put a bunch of them together. I personally prefer to use the plus operator. The plus is supported in every one that I know. Wait, is it? I don't think it is. Plus is not supported in Oracle. Oracle does something different. They all have something that acts like plus. If you put plus between two strings, SQL Server concatenates them. And Oracle might, I just have to try it. I'm going to be doing Oracle tonight in the advanced class. Lower and upper changes a string to all lowercase or all uppercase. Here are these guys. Lower and upper. Returns a string that is the same one passed, only it's all uppercase or all lowercase. That's handy to do when you want to eliminate, make something not case sensitive. There's some examples. Upper, fee, fi, fo, fum, changes it. Substring, start at position 5, give me back 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 4 is the space. 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I expect to see coming back from that is fi and fo. Next. String problems. Okay. Need to move this down a little bit. Common string problems. We have some issues with character data. Frequently, I mentioned about storing, when is a number a number? When is a phone number a number? Well, is it a number? And you're saying, no, it isn't. Well, it isn't, because you're never going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide it. So I have a number. Actually, it is cheaper, particularly if it's a small number, to store it as a character string than it is to store it as an integer. It's cheaper. Doesn't take as much memory. So I can put the character data in there. So if I have some numbers, it's just easier to call it a char field than it is to make it an integer. But this gives us some kind of problems. Others include numbers stored as strings and multiple values in a single string. And we find numbers stored as strings until we try to sort by it. So for example, the string 1, 2 would be sorted before the string 2. Okay. No, excuse me. 2 would be sorted first. I need to change that. Let me edit this. So the string just 2 would be sorted before the string 1, 2. For the same reason, the string AB would sort before B.
I think you had it right the first time.
Go ahead.
I think you had it right the first time.
Had it right the first time.
Yeah, all the ones will get sorted first, and then 1, 2s, and right.
Yeah. This gives us the problem. Anyway, the yeah, okay, I did have it right. Yeah, something was bugging me about that. The string 1, 2 would sort before the string 2. Okay. Okay. Strings containing numbers should be left padded with zeros. For example, this one, instead of saying it's 2, this one should be stored as 0, 2. And that will cause them always to sort correctly. Okay. Another approach is to cast it. So we can cast it to an int as we sort it. Select something from context. Order by cast the ID as an integer. Now it will sort correctly. But what if the ID has something that isn't an integer in it? And so we can use the try convert to cast it. So let's see, 21 will come. Will 21 come before 200? I believe 200 would come before 21. Would 20 come before? 20 will come before 21, but 200 will also come before 21. So you get some problems in there. Now, we do not like this. We have multiple values stored in a string. So for example, when I have something like first name, comma, space, last name, or last name, comma, space, first name. Now this violates a fundamental property of database. Remember what were our 3 basic rules of the first normal form? Data are accessed by content only, not by position. And we say, well, that gets violated. Sometimes we say select top 10, and that's selecting them by position. So we see that violated. Let's see, there can be no duplicate records. Well, if you don't make a primary key, you can have a duplicate record. It's considered poor, very poor form, but okay, there's nothing stopping you. And similarly, a field has exactly 1 value. Well, if the field has the last name, comma, space, first name, and you are using it as two values, you're violating that rule. So a field, if you need to have your data in terms of area code, remember the area code is that first 3 digits of the phone number that's usually in parentheses. And if you're going to use that area code as a value in and of itself, then you should break that out as a separate field. So you should have a field for the first name and a field for the last name. In order to, this is one that I frequently will put on a test at some point because it's real common. In order, we have a way to tell where one value ends and the next begins. This might be based on length. In this case, it is a comma space. Starts at position 1 and ends when we encounter a comma space pair. And what would happen if the name contained a comma space? The first name begins 2 spaces after the comma and ends at the end of the string. So I would go, when I would work with this, I would look for, do I have any data in here that do not conform? So before selecting, I would look for something like this, where does everybody have a comma in their name? Okay. One character, at least one character followed by a comma, followed by a space, followed by at least one character. So do I have a comma in there? For example, the name Sting. Remember that rock star that was named Sting? Well, he wouldn't have a, was that his first name or his last name? I don't know either. But one of them he doesn't have a comma space. Now, to get the last name, where is the comma? This is where it's really handy to have a variable, because I would like to put that into a variable and then come back and use it later. But I can find out where that comma space is by saying I want to find the char index of comma space okay, so there's a comma and a space there in contact name. So that gives me the position of that. Therefore, the last name is substring of contact name, start at 1, and this is the index of the comma. Am I making any sense at all? Now, substring, I start at 1 and go up to that comma. This is the position, this is the index of the comma, excuse me. This is the index of a comma, and take 1 away from that. All right, what is that? That's the last name. Okay, to recover the first name's past that. I'm going to I use the char index, contact name. Where is that comma? And then I add 2 to it to get to the first letter of the last name. And I want from there to the end of the string. So from there to the len. So the SQL in all its glory is this, and I'll probably put, I'll try to get an example together and put it out there where I build a table that has this in it, and you can actually see it work. It covers just the area code. I think we have done it this way. Write a select statement that recovers just the area code, not the parentheses, just the area code. In other words, I want just this part right there. So this is an example. Where does it begin? It begins at position 2. And it goes until you get, and so give me start at position 2 and give me 3 characters is the simplest, although I could look for the open parentheses, close parentheses for a beginning and an end delimiter. If I didn't know that I had exactly 3 characters starting at position 2, I'd have to do it that way. Questions? This is the discussion of that one. Numbers. Numeric functions pretty well, and that is 268 to page 271. Be sure to read that. I'm not going to sit here and read the textbook to you. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. We have a floor and a ceiling. So there are 3 functions that deal with decimal places. So I have some number like 3.6. If I say round 3.6, what does it do? It rounds it to a 4. If I said round 3.4, it would round it to 3. I also have a way to say round to the nearest decimal, round to the nearest, to the 10th place, round it to the nearest 10th, round it to the nearest 100th. So I have a way to talk about the decimals, but rounding works like you expect rounding to work. It does a pretty good discussion of it. So if I say round 3.777, comma 2, in other words, round to the 100th place. So my example is going to have 2 decimals in it. So it'd be 3.78. The 2 that are commonly found are floor and ceiling. If I said to take the floor of a number, what do you think that means? So if I said the floor of 3.7, print. What do you expect that to print? Floor. Go down.
3.
Yeah, 3. So it doesn't always mean down. It means left. Left on the number line. So if I said to the same thing, print the floor of negative 3.7, that's going to go left on, so it's going to be the next integer less than that one. So this one is going to print a negative 4 because that's the one left on the number line. Questions? The same thing, it works the same way with ceiling. Commonly, sometimes you will find the ceiling to be abbreviated. Instead of writing ceiling, they write CEIL. And instead of printing it out, SQL Server writes ceiling, and I forget what Oracle does with that. They might write CEIL. Remember, I before E except after C, and ceiling, the EI comes after C, so it's E before I in this case. Notice it's spelling. The next integer either to the left or right. So the ceiling goes right on the number line. The ceiling goes up if it's a positive number, and will always go to the right on the number line. There are 2 others. Fix is the next integer away from 0. Okay, now it seems like I was testing this one, and I found it wasn't working like I was expecting it to do. So I might need to do a little bit of Googling here. Print, fix. Notice that it's not changing colors. So fix 3.2. I'm expecting that to go to a 4, but I don't really expect it to work because fix isn't showing up as a, so let's see what happens there. Fix is not a recognized function. Okay, I guess I need to Google that and figure out how to do it. Fix typically goes, it usually has one, it usually has something. Fix is the next integer away from 0. So if you fix 3.2, you get 4. If you fix negative 3.2, you get negative 4. So you always go away from 0. Truncate is the opposite of that. Truncate just chops off the decimal. So if you get 3.99999 and you truncate it, you get 3. I think it's truncate, T-R-U-N-C-A-T-E. Let me test it. Truncate. See what happens. I'm going to Google that one right quick. SQL truncate. Well, it's not letting me do that. It's saying it's part of SQL, but our SQL is not recognizing it. I can do it. I can cast it as an integer, and that will chop it off, which is what truncate does. Maybe we would just have to cast it as an integer to truncate it. There's other ways of getting fix that will work, but most of the time you will have, where were I? Most of the time you'll have floor and ceiling, and then you will have fix and truncate. Okay. And one more that I'm going to mention here that is a very useful function is the natural logarithm. I don't know whether to do this one or not. I do not have this one on the test, so you do not need to worry about this one for the test, but what does a log mean? Oh, if I get bogged down in this, I'm going to lose most people. Log of a number gives us the natural log of it. I'm not going to get bogged down in this. This is not in the textbooks, so I'm just going to, I'll let you take a look at it. Log gives us what we would find in mathematics as being, in mathematics, we would write it ln. So when we say log, that's what we get. Log base E. But if I get into this, I'm just going to lose everybody or most of us. Somebody. Yeah, websites say truncate number. Okay. Amanda, what is decimal number that you're talking about there? Truncate number, decimal number.
I think it's the number of decimals that you want to truncate it to, or
Okay.
something like that.
Well, let me try it here. Because it's recognizing truncate. Where is it? Truncate. To 0 decimals. Now,
I think it's only recognizing truncate because that's for truncating tables.
Yeah, truncating a table. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, the truncate function says it's used by MySQL.
MySQL
That's what I see online.
And Oracle, I'm sure. That's why I was expecting it here. I guess in SQL Server, if you want to truncate a decimal, you just have to cast it as an integer, and that will truncate the decimal. Okay. Well, let's see. Round, floor, ceiling, and round are covered. Time and date functions. We've talked about time and dates in the last one. A date, remember, is an integer, and so we have date time. It holds a time value, 8 bytes. Small date time, we have a it doesn't use as much. I usually use small date time because for the most part, when I'm just doing something and I want to know about what time is it, if I ask you what time it is, I really don't want you to tell me that it is 11:56 and 23 seconds. Date, it's like date time with a 1-day accuracy. It's simply the date, and the time is the time alone. Let's see. So if the most commonly used date function is getDate, so if I use this getDate, print the date. In other words, what is the date and time right now? So this gives me the time on the server at this second. This is commonly used to insert into a record. When you create the record, if you want to record the time that that record was created. So if I'm inserting an invoice or something, and I want to make sure that I have the correct date when I put it in there, I use the get date when I insert it. What else do we have? Okay. Frequently, it's known by a different identifier. Here's a couple of things that I've noticed that changed. Now in Access, if you say now, it's still a function. And in Oracle, it doesn't have the parentheses on it. You use the SYSDATE. Okay. Other useful date times, date add. Date, yeah, it's 90 plus get date. So a date 90 days from today could be calculated as, and the D here tells you to treat that. This is covered in the textbook well. D says to treat the 90 as 90 days. M would say treat it as 90 months. H would say treat it as 90 hours. So typically you'll use D. So that first one tells you D. Sometimes you'll see it written as DD. but most of the time it's just D. So it says treat that number as a number of days. So that's the date, 90 days from today. The third parameter, get date, is today's date. How many to add? By the way, it could be negative. And the first parameter tells the function, I give you a reading assignment there, top of page 275. And it gives you a table of various things. This one, what date is 90 days from today? Print. Let's add 90 days and see. 90 days from today will be January 28th, 2020. At 12 p.m., the reason we're going to get 12 p.m. is because I said 90 days from, well, it's 12 p.m. now, isn't it? Okay, we're about ready for a break. Okay, date difference. Date difference is a little bit weird. Somebody. Did I just kill that share?
Yeah, we lost it.
Okay. Let's see if I can get back to that. Share. Okay. Did you get it back?
Yes, sir. There it is.
Okay. Date difference. Let's see. Let me see what they do with it. Date difference is, what is that chirping? Somebody coming and going? Okay. Invoice date. Okay, find invoices entered less than, THAN. I guess I better go ahead and fix that now. So less than 90 days ago. Now, this gets tricky. So it says the 90, in other words, interpret it, give me my answer in days. When I talk about 90 days ago, it's going to subtract the first one, that's the invoice date, and the second one is today. So it's going to subtract the first one from the second one. It's going to track the second parameter from the third parameter. So this is a little bit different from how you would write it. If I were writing that across the page, I would say get date minus invoice date is less than 90. But this one is going to do it the other way around. So if I switch these two parameters, let's see, do I have any good examples here? There are some good examples in the textbook, but the main thing is that find invoices entered less than 90 days ago. For this guy, I want you to make sure that before you do your exercises on this, make sure that you run the createap.sql. Run your createap.sql. If you don't, you won't find any invoices entered less than 90 days ago, because if you ran your create AP 90 days ago, there won't be any. They've all gone off the clock. So this, if you run that again, it will put them back and it will bring all of your stuff up to date. save that. I will, I'll put a better example than this one out there. Discretionary material. Well, it's 1204. Pages 284 and through 299. I'm calling this discretionary material. This part of the module will cover the case and the IIF functions, and the functions are described here are not part of SQL. They are many times implemented. So they are used in a select statement. So they say select something. For example, they can be used, I've got values like 1, 2, or 3 in the database. And I say select what we call that, say, terms ID. Select terms ID from the terms table. Case terms ID, 1, show cash, 2, net in 30. So it lets you say, give it a case statement and say, when it's 1, you're going to print out this value. When it's 2, you print out that value. I don't find this to be real important in terms of SQL. I have never needed it in SQL, but you can take a look at it. It's just so that's page 284 through 299. That will not appear on the test. I'll try to put some examples of that out there for you, but it's I have it down here to skip it. Okay, discussion. Quiz. Exercises. 40 points. Okay. Exercise 5. Okay, I want you to skip exercise 5. Somebody keeps sending me a text. Hang on. Ah. Okay. Let's see, that says end of assignment, end of assignment, end of assignment. What do I mean there? Yeah, it means skip number 5. Now, if you want to do number 5, you may do number 5, but number 5 simply has some formatting stuff in it that I do not intend to use that. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4 only. Okay. Questions? Okay, I have made the practice test 2, excuse me, practice test 2 available. I will make the solutions available before I I'll probably make the solutions available either tomorrow or Friday. I'll give you some time to look over them before I make the solutions available. And then I will assign the test, probably will assign the test on Friday. Leave it, yeah, on Friday. I'll leave it open over the weekend and into next week. How many days do you think I should leave the test open? A week. How about 5 days? What do you guys
Sounds-
online think?
That sounds good.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So if I cut it off at the end of the day on Wednesday, after making it let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If I assigned it Friday, and I would count that as 0, right? So Saturday would be day 1, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday all day. So that would be 5 days and then some. Questions? Okay, I don't want to hear anybody saying I didn't have time to get the test done. Within that time frame, we have to get it done. So I'm not saying you have to come in here and take it. It will be available to you on Monday. If you need to come in to class and take it, you may. I will be here on Monday in the morning. Questions? Okay, I'm gonna end there. Let's see, what do we have left to do? Looking at our modules. Data types, the functions today. Okay, we're going to talk about database views. We're going to talk about indexing, database design. Let's see, so we have how many more class meetings? November, let's see, we have the 6th, the 13th, the 27th. We do not meet on November the 20th. So 3 meetings in November. December 4th, so we have 4 more class meetings. Am I counting correctly? So this is the day of the final. Okay. Remember, the final will be optional. If you are happy with your test 1 and test 2 grades, if you need to raise any of that, you'll take the final. Questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So it's on module 10. I already finished it, but I can't find anywhere where we go over the styles to assign to varchar.
Module 10?
Yes. Unless it's in the textbook. I was just going off the lecture videos for that one.
Which one is it? Number 1?
It's on 1 and 2. So that last bullet says varchar and style 1.
Oh, yeah, look that up. It's something you'll probably, that's in the try convert. So look under the try convert in the textbook. Try convert lets you have various styles of how you're going to do that. So data type decimal, return the 4th column as a data type, varchar style 1. That just, it's a way of formatting it. So the try convert gives you some formatting options that you don't have. Just to look at that in the textbook. It makes more sense there. I could go over it. I do not consider that real important. That particular bullet came from the textbook. So I don't see, SQL is just not a formatting language. It's not used for formatting. If I want to format it, I'm going to drop it into a spreadsheet. But you'll see that in the book. I could pull up the page, but look in the index under for try convert, and it's not real long there. You'll see it. There's a table of styles, and there's only like 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
If you use to, you can play around with it some, try style 2 and see what they do. That's what I have to do with it when I want to program with it, but I don't usually use it. Others?
In module 10 there, so is the chapter 8 quiz the same date? Is there same due date as the assignment? There's no date on it right now. And also
The quiz?
Yes, module 10, chapter 8
I don't
quiz.
know. I don't usually put due dates on the quiz because
Okay.
the quizzes take care of themselves.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, you know, quizzes are. I don't really care when the quiz happens.
Okay.
I just had to have those to get the course certified. I mean,
Got it. And then for module 11, page 8 assignments are going
let's
to be
see, module 11. I don't have module 11. I should have assigned that one as I've got a feel they're coming pretty close. Goodness gracious. Module. Yeah, I haven't put that. I guess I ought to put that date on there. I thought I had put that date. Okay. I'll put the date. What date shall I put on there? How about yesterday? Let's see, today's the 30th. I'm gonna put due on the 6th. I'm not gonna cut it off on the 6th. As you are looking at this, make sure you go back. I have not been cutting these off, so make sure that you have your old assignments turned in. I'm gonna get really upset if you turn in a whole bunch of assignments on the last day of class. Always gonna have somebody do that, but that does not make your teacher happy, and you want your teacher to be happy. Other questions? I'm going to end the recording.